What is an AI agent? Tech Curious 87. Well, I'm a CEO at an AI company, and I'm here to answer your most asked AI questions. So, Tech Curious asks, what's an AI agent? He's been hearing terms about agents, multi-agents. Let's break it down. We've all seen tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Microsoft Copilot, Gemini, all these assistants where you ask them a question and they'll generate an answer. That's more about the text completion using a large language model. So you've heard about LLMs. And when you augment, give powers, you guys have heard of augmented reality. You give this LLM, this large language model, powers, capabilities. They actually call them tools. If you give them tools, now all of a sudden it does more than answer questions. It can do stuff for you. And that's really what an AI agent is at its core. It's an augmented large language model with more capabilities. It can do stuff like reason, there's memory capabilities, it can browse the web for you. We're seeing this in things like Manus.ai. So those are AI agents. Now you also mentioned multi-agents. Multi-agents are like teams of agents. Just like how I described what an AI agent is with tools and a large language model, imagine a bunch of them working together. Now why is that important? Because there is a little bit of a restriction with how these models work because they get guided towards an answer. And when you have different agents responsible for one thing, kind of like how you have people responsible for one thing, like you have a graphic designer, you have a copywriter and an editor, you have a manager. When you have all these skills broken down into particular agents, they can work together and focus on their capabilities so that they're more predictable. You can create more predictable systems. There are things like I mentioned a manager. There's this pattern called the supervisor agent, where its only role is to figure out who could be the best agent to accomplish this task. Hope that gave you an idea of what an agent and a multi is. All right, next question from AI Newbie 2025. What types of AI are there? Now, LLMs weren't the only type of AI beforehand. There's other types of AI, like the new models we're seeing now, these reasoning, thinking like models. We saw news from DeepSeek, we saw OpenAI with O1 and O3. We have Claude Sonnet 3.7 now with extended thinking. So these models can reason. So these are reasoning models. There's this great book, Think Fast and Think Slow. And it's very similar where these models are like humans when we decide to think slow. So that's the thinking and reasoning model. Then there's the chat completion models, which is what we've all seen before from the large language model, which just completes text. And then there's the multimodal models. These are things that do image generation, like the one that's trending right now with ChatGPT 4o generation. There's video generation, like Google's Gemini does really well at video generation. And then there's audio as well. So other than just text inputs, there's other inputs. Those are multimodal models. And which ones are worth learning on your job? Honestly, all of them. Next, we have a question from Martin. What is the AI Singularity? Pretty sure actually the Singularity was written by a book I have here, Ray Kurzweil. This book here is How to Create a Mind, which coincidentally was the book where he described how to create a mind before AI even existed. So he called this whole thing out. But he also called the Singularity. And the Singularity is about this moment where intelligence gets so smart that it can essentially reproduce and is more intelligent than humans and don't need any human involvement at all to improve, to get better, to accomplish tasks, where they're no longer constrained to the limits of mere bodies and just require power. When that moment happens, he calls that the singularity because there's no turning back. And you're asked, is it already happening? Is it science fiction nonsense? It's not nonsense. It's not science fiction. I kind of think we should be afraid. There's no reason to happen, but it's not happening yet. I would say where we are right now is we're approaching AGI, and it's 2025. I'd argue it's already here. AI history buff asks, what is an LLM? But what's interesting is that they didn't stumble on language to create intelligence. It seems so hindsight is 2020 because we speak language is how we communicate with each other. It's not like everyone has a language like us, that's what makes us unique in a way. But before language, I believe it was Google DeepMind that was doing projects with facing grand chess masters as an example. And they were also doing stuff on Dota 2 in the video game scene. So they were finding the toughest games that required people because they thought that's how you get intelligence. And it never really broke through. It wasn't until the breakthrough with ChatGPT and the OpenAI team where they discovered it wasn't about intelligence, wasn't behind games, but behind language. So I think that's what's super cool about large language models, and that's what an LLM. Optimistic futurist asks, what is AI even good for? Everyone talks about it replacing jobs. I'd rather focus on the positive. Everyone's talking about it replacing jobs. There's about 80 million knowledge worker jobs around Canada and the United States. And it will seriously, just like how robots disrupted the Industrial Revolution, AI will disrupt the knowledge, and that's going to happen and is happening this year in 2025. Even the CEO of Shopify, he just released a report. They include how much AI have you used, performance reviews. They are looking at if you can't accomplish what you're doing with AI, then look towards growing your team. Don't look towards growing your headcount unless you've tried it with AI. These are initiatives happening at companies right now. So in that way, they will replace jobs, like a lot of tedious jobs, a lot of workflows that are just painful and no one really wants to do, like research, like analysis. Now, people are still going to be talking to each other. There's going to be a lot of things where AI is going to create the initial version, and then that'll spark creative juices flowing between people. So I think that's where it's going to stay, but it's going to definitely replace the tedious and boring work. You also ask, is it going to be replacing motor skills? So there's this really cool thing with the NVIDIA team. NVIDIA created the world model, and in the world model they're training artificial intelligence to learn motor skills. So it's in these game environments where, just like how we play video games and we like fall off the cliff, these AIs are learning what will and won't work with real world physics in these simulation environments. And that's how these AIs learn motor skills that we spend most of our lives learning how to walk, learning sports. There's crazy clips now of AI robots that we've never seen before. So yeah, AI will end up replacing more and more motor skills, which is great because we want to be doing better work. And a lot of people still are talking about how this will replace jobs, but it'll just have us do more interesting things. A great example is before AI, Veritasium made a great video on YouTube. It showed us how before, I remember on my PlayStation, there was this project Folding at Home, and I believe it was by the SETI team, and all the PlayStations were connected to a network to work together to compute what are the shapes of proteins, because it's actually the shape of these proteins that allow it to do stuff in the real world. And it took forever, like tons of PS3s. I remember talking about how powerful PS3 was. It was like a supercomputer. That was what they called it, a supercomputer in a game console. And these computers would take forever still, even with the entire PlayStation network, to create protein. And it wasn't until the AI discovery and they trained and fine-tuned a model on discovering proteins that every single protein got discovered in like less than a year. So AI is great for things like that discovery that would have taken scientists, it did take scientists decades to discover the handful of proteins. Hemoglobin was the first protein discovered, and it was a manual process. This dude won a Nobel Prize, and he's like building, those DNA structures of hemoglobin, and that's what helped the scientists understand how to do blood therapies and medicine around the blood. And now AI generated all these proteins. Now we have all these proteins and we need to figure out what to do with, where to find them, where are they found in nature. So these are new questions that we can ask now, and that's what's making AI different. It's not replacing us, it's helping us ask the most valuable and better questions. What is vibe coding from Code with Mia? Can someone please explain? Is this another tech buzzword? Vibe coding is the new way of coding. If you're not vibe coding, you are doing it wrong. So vibe coding is this idea that you can give an AI a task in your code, in your repo, using tools like Cursor or Bolt and Lovable as well, and it will start doing the coding for you. As your code base, it'll figure out files and feature the UI. And usually these new apps, they have what's called an agent, and these agents have tools. It's more than just a chat completion, predict next word, I guess you can say, and is actually more about using tools. Think about and talk to itself or other agents in this multi-agent system, and it will figure out what file to update. Where should I upcode? Do I need to consolidate this code into a utility function? All these different things, that's vibe coding, and it takes a while. And the reason they call it vibe coding is because when you give these tools, these instructions, it'll just start going off. We'll start building stuff. It takes a while to program it, so you can like sit back, relax, and see, is the tool going in the direction I want it to? And now our job as as a programmer is more to guide a direction. Was my prompt not clear enough? And then you could just pause it or stop it, rewrite the where it's at to help guide it in the right direction. Very human-like, actually. So that's what vibe coding is. And I think the same thing's gonna happen in other parts of the industry. It'll be more than just, we're gonna see more vibe marketing. We're already seeing image generation, video generation, same idea. I think there'll be a lot of opportunities around the creative to vibe. Is AI dumb? Is it really sentient? All language models, large language models, are trained on what's called the attention, and that attention mechanism is what helps it where to focus, kind of like how we focus our attention, and that's what creates this context window. You hear this context window when these foundational model companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, they release their new model, and then they say something like, and the limit is 200k token, 30k token. That's the context window. And if you use these AI products, you'll start to notice the context window when your conversations get, I know in Claude, when your conversation gets too long, it'll say start a new chat. That's because you're reaching the limit of the context window, which comes from the attention mechanism on training these large language models. Now, what's really interesting is that you could ask, are AIs dumb? Are they really sentient? There's this really interesting study from Anthropic, the team behind the Claude Assistant app. And in that study, they found that the AI thinks like a human, and it's not actually predicting the next word. Like, for example, when it's doing math, it's not thinking about the next word. It kind of thinks how I think about math, honestly, when it's like, what's 17 plus 32? And it'll be like, well, 17 is 20-ish, 32 is 30-ish, so I would say 50-ish minus 5, and that's how it gets the answer. And that's just one domain. It does very similar thing in other areas, and that's not like predict next word. So I would argue AI is not as dumb. You better be on the right side. Well, these were some really good questions, guys. I hope I answered some of your questions, and if you have more questions, leave them in a comment below.